let me play a very interesting scenario out for you. Okay. Let's say you're employed, you have a job, you're getting paid money to do it, and you have an approval rating of 21%, and you get to keep your job for as long as you want. End of story. If you're offered that job, you're probably going to take it. If it has a half decent pay and you're not like, physically exhausted from it and you're not in any like real danger and it's not a dangerous job, anything like I don't know a single person out there that would say like, hey, you can have this job for as long as you want and you can even be horrible at it to the point where people know that you're not doing it well and you're still going to keep that job. That is where we're at. That's where we've been at with our government. So episode 3, retire our government. That's what we're going, that's what we're getting into. Okay. Honestly, when I thought about this episode, it was strictly going to be an age thing. And that's like a huge part of this, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to find like a couple other, I guess, tidbits on what could help me with my case on retiring our entire government. And that was a pretty like, I hope that got your attention because it got mine, right? You can have an approved Congress, okay? Just so we're all clear here. As of October 22nd, no. As of October of 2022, Congress has a 21% approval rating. Now, I looked up the same thing for the president, right? And as of November 1st, 2022, the president has a 40% approval rating and a 55% disapproval rating. So that's 95%. So I guess 5% just genuinely don't care. That's the fact that we can like get that data and share it and talk about it and put it out there in the world and then continue to not do anything about it is kind of insane to me. It just sounds wild that, because how did they get elected, right? They get elected because a majority of the voters voted for that person, okay? Why is it that when they win the election then, like all bets are off? We're not going to hold them to standards then at that point. You need a majority. But then when you're in the job, if 40% of the people think that you're doing good, awesome. If 21% think you're doing an okay job, kick back. Keep doing what you're doing, right? The government exists because of the people, right? Let's look at just like the basic reason why governments exist. Here's what it is. The citizens decide that they are willing to give up certain conveniences, certain, I don't want to say freedoms or liberties, but there's a trade-off, right? They are saying, yep, we're willing to sacrifice X, Y, and Z for our government to do A, B, and C, okay? When that idea alone just can't be overstressed, okay? Without the people, there's no government, okay? But 21% of us are saying we approve what Congress is doing, and yet they get to just keep their, okay? So that's how we're going to start this off. Just like we talk about, people say that, our country's divided, blah, blah, blah. We're clearly not divided on this because it's not even like it's 49% approval rating. Like I looked back to see president specific. The president had a 50% or more approval rating between, it was like 1998 and 2003. So that would have been the Clinton administration and George W.'s administration, okay? And pretty much since then, we've been under the, like, you guys, it's not as divided as others make it out to be. Like, we all are in agreement. Nobody's happy with the government. All right. Let's consider retiring them. I thought this was a very fitting episode with the elections coming up, midterm elections coming up. So I've got a page of notes here, and I could have probably gone 3 pages of notes. But I want to keep it somewhat condensed. If you want to fact check me, by all means, I invite you guys to fact check me. I'm sure there's something in here that maybe is incorrect or outdated. Definitely wasn't my intention, but we're all in agreement. Nobody's happy with the government. Okay. And then let's get into this too. If you're not happy, how often have we heard in recent memory that like energy crisis and supply chain issues? Okay. I'm good with blaming the government on that. Okay. Because I remember, I want to say 5 or 10 years ago, I remember, I don't know if it was an article or a book or a class, or I just came across this information that basically said the United States power grid is like, at that time, it was like 20 to 30 years outdated. And I might be making up a word here. I don't know. The fragility, the fragile nature, or the fragile state that our power grid in the US is like mind-blowing to how fragile it, I guess I should, fragile. You're walking on thin ice, skating on thin ice, whatever. It's garbage, right? Now, do citizens not pay taxes? Yes. What are tax dollars for? Tax dollars are to fund the government, okay? And to fund the government for things that would benefit the people that are paying the tax dollars, right? In my opinion, I think that if you're going to be paying tax dollars, you probably should, it should be a lot more direct in terms of how taxpayers can see the impact of that money. And that kind of leads me into the fact that as of in 2021, the US sent $38 billion to other countries, foreign aid, okay? $38 billion, right? And what was our budget for this year, 2022, was $6.27 trillion. And the year before that, again, we sent out $38 billion. So what I want to know, oh, and by the way, our country's $31 trillion in debt, if you didn't know. So let's factor all this in. Let's step past the point of like, all right, why should our government retire? Well, first off, nobody's happy with them. Secondly, let's look at money management, right? We're $31 trillion in debt. And whatever, you can like, let's point fingers. Sure. No, we're not going to do that. All I'm saying is like, let's just start with solutions. Okay. It's not about like pointing to this party or that party or this administration or that administration. Like, the country's $31 trillion in debt. All right. At what point are we just going to say, let's do something about it? Maybe start by not sending $38 billion in tax money out of the country. And then justifying it as in, oh, this is for our security, or this is for X, Y, and who cares? That's a big one, right? I just don't, I can't understand. I just can't understand like how a country can be so in debt, but like our currency is the standard globally. Our economy is the best if you don't include China. Like, let's manage our money. Like, that's basically, here's where I get annoyed with the $31 trillion in debt. I get annoyed with that because if the government is spending more than it's generating, or it's spending more than its budget, right? They are stealing taxpayers' money at that point. Because if we're going to say like, oh, yep, hypothetical, I don't know. We're going to plan a $5 trillion budget and we're going to spend 7 trillion. We're going to spend 5.5, whatever. You're going to spend more. All I'm saying is the fact that we get in debt means they have overspent, and we still have how many problems in our country? Like any other country, right? This probably, I mean, hey, if you feel like it fits your country too, and you're listening to this outside of the US, by all means, like, these are just basic, like, nobody approves of what they're doing. We're in crazy debt and it doesn't stop. Whose money is that? That's the people paying the taxes, right? So, couple reasons, all right? The big one that I was really focusing on here when this idea first came to mind was age, okay? You can come at me, come down on me, whatever. Like, ageism is a thing, okay? Ageism is a thing. It's like discrimination based off of age. But I'm going to make the case for it. I'll make the case against it, all right? But I'm just going to say, like, there's probably the staple to why I'm focused on age so much here really has to do with term limits. Okay. So again, why should we retire our government? Number one, nobody approves of what they're doing. Number two, horrible fiscal management. Number three, I'll say is this before we even get to age. Number three, and I will say 4 is age, but age stems from point number 3. Point number 3 is how long they can be in their positions, right? Quick little government history, government lesson here, okay? A US president can serve 2 4-year terms, all right? They can also, not in addition, but cumulatively, they can serve as president for 10 years, okay? And you might be like, well, how does that happen if it's 4-year terms? If they're vice president, let's say, and 2 years into that presidency, president for whatever can no longer hold the office, vice president becomes the president. They then would have served 2 years, and then they come up for, I guess, re-election. I don't know the intricacies of that, but let's say they serve, okay, now they get elected for a 4-year term. Now at the end of that 4-year term, they would have served for 6 years, but constitutionally they can serve for 10 because there would be obviously a second 4-year term. So that's like the only term limit, all right? You look at Congress, there's no term limits. The senators can serve 6-year terms, but there's no limit. Representatives can serve 2-year terms, there's no limit. Supreme Court justices, that is a life position, okay? And then that goes right back to point number 1 with the approval rating. They get these positions for life until enough of us get annoyed and say, all right, that's it. Now, there are legal ways to go about removing people from positions. I actually don't know what it's like. I don't know if a Supreme Court justice can be removed. I would imagine there's a way, but I personally don't know it. But term limits, it makes no sense to me because, and we'll see here, like we'll get into this age breakdown and everything, and we'll even get into like a little bit of the medical side of this and see if I'm justified at all in what I'm saying. But I just don't understand how, like, let's say it was somebody elected in 1995, okay, to the Senate, and they've been in that position ever since. Okay, yes, on paper, it's like, well, every 6 years, clearly they're winning a majority of the votes. So, like, are they justified in being there? I guess, like, I hadn't played that one out in my own head until I just made that argument myself right now verbally. I mean, on one hand, like, yeah, if they keep getting voted in, like, why should we set limits on them? But for me, and you could argue like there's no term limits because then they know how things work. They have the experience to handle all of this, and you're not going to get somebody in there that doesn't know what they're doing or whatever. But I would argue term limits is almost a no-brainer because, again, you don't want to have these people that know the game and play the game. You want them to be, government officials are servants to the citizens, right? And so if you had these term limits set up where, let's say, senators could serve 2 terms, okay, 12 years, that's a decent time period, all right? And reps, and I'm just like throwing things out. Let's say reps could serve, I don't know, 3 terms, so they could serve for 6 years, whatever you want to set the term limits to. Where is the harm in that? Because what you're going to have then is basically a guarantee of turnover, which I don't see this as a bad thing, because what I want to see is, I would like to see people working in our government representing the people that are maybe the most recently detached from private life, right? So if I'm going to have a senator and I'm like, well, geez, he's been a senator for 30 years now, he doesn't know anything other than this. That doesn't actually make me feel better. What I would feel better about is, oh yeah, I don't know, so-and-so is this lawyer, and yeah, he's gonna serve for 6 to 12 years as a senator now, and then go back to private life. Or yeah, this guy was mayor of this small town, and now he's going to be a representative, and we've got him for 2 to 6 years. Like, I don't see what the problem is of having people that we look to for their expertise in their daily life for whatever, whether it's teachers, doctors, police, like, again, these people should be servants for the citizens. And when it becomes the point where, like, hey, as long as I can get elected each time it comes around, I don't even need 25% of people to think that I'm doing a good job, and I'm still there. Okay. So yeah, number 1, nobody likes them. Number 2, what did I say? Oh, money management. Number 3, again, term limits. And number 4, that kind of brings us into the age thing, because if there were term limits, I honestly would not care how old somebody is, right? Because let's say an 85-year-old gets elected this election, and there's a term limit for one term of 6 years. We could even change how long the terms are, but let's just say there was some type of term limit. That tells me, like, okay, well, this is good because, at this moment right now, people saw something good in this candidate. That doesn't mean they're going to be in that position for however long. But again, now I know, like, as I'm saying this again, I know that argument's coming back. Like, well, they still have to get elected each election period. But again, I'm just saying, like, turnover is okay. I would rather have people that have the perspective of I want them to have the perspective of an American citizen, not of an American politician. I guess that's where I'm getting. Okay. So that brings me to point number 4. And I'm just going to throw out a couple things here and there. First off, depending on when you were born, you can file for Social Security at the age of either 66 or 67, okay? Essentially, you can retire when you're 66 or 67, okay? Just to put that as like a little bit of a framework. The average age of an American is 38.1 years old, okay? The average age of an American is 38 years old. You can retire when you're 60. I'm just going to say 67 for the sake of, like, not having to say bold. All right. You can retire at the age of 67. Average age of an American is 38. Okay. The 117th Congress, as of January 3rd, 2021, the average age of representatives was 58, and the average age of a senator was 64. Now, those numbers might not sound totally insane, but I'm going to break down to you how this average gets added up. Okay. So first off, let's start with the House, because it's just like the 435 voting members. Like, we'll just break that one down. Okay. Average age, 58 years old for representatives. There is one representative under the age of 30. There is about 100 that are in their 30s or 40s. There's about 100 that are in their 50s. There are over 200 that are in their 60s or 70s. And there are 18 that are in their 80s. Let that sink in for a second, okay? Think about your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. Think about any elderly person that you may know, you may see on TV, you may see in the media. We're not talking about, and I don't want to belittle anybody's jobs, but we're not talking about an accountant or a teacher or a massage therapist, okay? We're talking about people that are literally making decisions for our country, for the 300 plus million people that are paying the tax dollars, okay? 18 that are 80 years or older. Okay, let's jump to the Senate now. And like I said, you thought that was bad. There's 18 of them that are over the age of 80. You had one guy that's under the age of 30. Okay. And let me like bring this one back to you again. Okay. Average age of Americans is 38. In the House of Representatives, which is 435 people that literally represent districts across our country, represent those people. The average age of an American is 38 years old. You have 25 representatives that are either under 30 or in their 30s. And if you want to group in, because the average age of an American is 38 years old, if you want to group in the 40s, you have 100. You have about roughly 100 representatives are in their 30s or 40s. Think about that in terms of like what the average American, and now I'm saying average American, what the average 38-year-old, what life experiences do they have? What worries them? What keeps them up at night? What are things that are important to them that they want to see our country, focus on? 1/4 of the House of Representatives has that perspective, okay? Yes, I know everybody else that's older, they're going to have a different perspective. So like older, the wiser, you can argue that. But I'm just saying, like, if you look at average American versus are they represented in the government? I mean, that's straightforward right there, okay? Now let's go over to the Senate, where the average age is 64 years old. And let me see here. I have a note that says, as of January 29, 2021, half of the Senate was over the age of 65. Okay, and here's what I did. So I broke it down by age once again, but I am keeping that like retirement age, 66, 67 there. I just want to showcase this to you, okay? 7 senators, we'll get to this, all right? We're going to go just like just like the House. Out of the Senate, you've got 100 voting members, okay? 1 is 35 years old. 4 are in their 40s. And if that doesn't scare you already, like out of the 100, 5 are remotely close to the average age of an American. Okay? 1's 35, 4 are in their 40s, 21 are in their 50s, 24 are in their 60s up to 66. Okay? And I did that because it's kind of like a cutoff, right? If you can get Social Security when you're 66 or 67, i.e. you can retire, in theory, you've got 50 senators that are the age of 67 or older. You have 13 that are between the ages of 67 and 69. You have 30 senators that are in their 70s, and you have 7 senators that are in their 80s. The craziest thing about this is, as I'm saying this out loud, like I feel like I hope the light bulbs are going off for somebody out there. But the craziest part about it is this is not a secret. This isn't groundbreaking discovery. I'm literally just calling it as it is, you guys. Like, Again, I go back to these people need to be reading bills. They need to be knowledgeable about what life is like in the present time, right? And again, life experience, I'm not saying that there's not like value in that or that we don't need different perspectives. By no means am I saying like I want every senator and every representative to be 38 years old because that's the average age. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is we don't even have like remotely close to that type of representation in the government. Not to mention the fact that they can't manage the money. Nobody approves of what they're doing. There's no term limits. So where's the accountability? Like, let that be what it is, okay? If you look at, so let's take Congress as a whole. So we've got the House of Representatives and the Senate. Average age of an American is 38. If you want to grab all of the Congress people that are, let's say, between the ages of 18 and 49 years old, which I think is a fair range when we're looking at the average age of an American, you're going to have 101, 102, 103, 107, you guys. 107. How about that? You've got 107 out of 535 people that are in their 20s, 30s, or 40s. So 107 divided by the 535, just to give you a percentage, you're looking at 20%. 20% of Congress is remotely in the age range of the average American, okay? Joe Biden, 79 years old. Donald Trump is 76 years old. Kamala Harris, hey, 58 years old. Nancy Pelosi, 82 years old. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, 71. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, 80 years old. I think it's time for them to retire. Think about like when there's congressional hearings about Facebook privacy issues. Do the people that we voted for, who are going to make the decisions on behalf of us, because we're a republic, not a democracy, okay? Do they have the understanding to make knowledgeable, education-based, maybe even experience-based decisions off of what they hear or off of what their understanding is for Facebook, TikTok, whatever, what a podcast is, okay? Again, I'm not saying there's no place for them in the government. What I'm saying is we've got plenty of reasons. Why don't we just hit the reset button? I took a look at some of the top, most successful, largest businesses, American businesses, okay? Just to give you a comparison. We went over the ages of Congress. I just went through pretty much the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 most, I guess, high-ranking officials or former officials. Biden 79, Trump 76, Harris 58, Pelosi 82, Schumer 71, McConnell 80. Okay. Walmart CEO, 56 years old. Amazon CEO, 54 years old. And again, I'm just like presenting information to you so that you can make up your own opinion off of it. Are there different demands to being a congressperson or a CEO? Obviously, but I'm just saying, look at 3 of the most successful businesses in the country. Walmart, 56 years old. Amazon CEO, 54 years old. Apple CEO, 62 years old. Now here's the argument for and against me, okay? I found a couple of stats here. The National Library of Medicine says cognitive decline occurs most often at the age of 70 and above. Okay. Cognitive decline, right? It's not even about like know-how of like, do you know how Facebook works and what happens if you swipe left or swipe like, or what AI is, okay? It's not even about that. It's just about like age and like the physical, mental side of this, okay? So National Library of Medicine says cognitive decline most often occurs at the age of 70 and above. So right off that, that's telling me, well, maybe we shouldn't have a majority of the top ranking officials. And according to this, it looks like we shouldn't have 130, close to 130 Congress people. Okay. What else do we have here? Relatively little decline up until around the age of 50, and you're stable until around the age of 60. But there's little to no drop in cognitive decline before the age of 55. Okay, so that's an argument for, you know, if we're just looking on cognitive ability, right? You're at your cognitive peak around the age of 35. Decline can start at 45. Again, it's going to all be subjective because you can find studies, you can find medical journals that'll say, this is why you're right, this is why you're wrong. But I'm just presenting what I found, okay? Cognitive peak around 35. Again, average age of an American, 38. How many Congress people do we have in their 30s? 25 out of 535. Awesome. Between the ages of 18 and 19, your information processes speeds peak. The age of 25, your short-term memory gets better and then begins to decline around the age of 35. I don't know about you, but that is something that I would see value in when I'm talking about somebody that's making decisions and trying to work politics, okay, working with other sides. Might be nice if they had good short-term memory in case, you know, they're in a debate or something comes up and they need to, you know, okay, we'll go on. At the age of 30, memory for faces peaks. That's probably just kind of a little bit of a random one, but I mean, that'd be really awkward if you were going to meet the, I don't know, president of Mexico and you, like, they briefed you on who he was, but you don't know who he is, okay? In your 40s and 50s, your emotional understanding peaks. So again, this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying like, there's no room for anybody that's over the age of 38.2 years old. I'm just saying, like, government needs to retire. Come on. Yes, in your 40s and 50s, I think it's valuable to have people in our government at that age because, again, emotional understanding, even if it's not political, right? If you're not working a political agenda, having emotional understanding is valuable just as a human being, right? Let alone if you're working with people and you're trying to compromise or come together or get your way, what have you, okay? In your 60s, vocabulary abilities continue to increase. I found that very, very interesting because it doesn't always appear that way, right? Depending on who you're looking at. It doesn't always appear that way, but I did find that interesting. And like I said, I'm not here to just like say like 100% this is why I'm right, but like I found a fact that shocked me. Again, maybe it's not retire because they're at a certain age, but I'm going to fall back to reason number one. Look at the approval ratings. Like we're just going to put up with it. Okay. 60, their vocab abilities continue to increase. 60s and 70s, their accumulated knowledge peaks, which I guess makes sense. Okay. So again, there's another argument for why having 60 and 70-year-old people in government is good because their accumulated knowledge has peaked. But again, does that outweigh horrible approval ratings? Does it outweigh the like? It's just we're ringing up debt, and it's just like at what point, like monkey see, monkey do, right? So how is the next generation not going to be like, $40,000 in credit card debt, no problem. Our government's in like $60 trillion of debt. So what's that matter? Like, you have to set the stage. You have to set the example, right? You can't just keep throwing money in the fire and being like, we'll let our kids' kids worry about it, okay? Does that outweigh the fact that there's no term limits, aside from the president? And then we get into, is age a factor? I'll leave you guys with this. The age-old saying, right? Age is just a number. But ask yourself this: are you pleased with what's been going on? Do you see an instance where age may be a factor? And then ask yourself, is age just a number? Because I did find articles where, you know, one thing that interests me was I wanted to know, like, surgeons, doctors, right? Doctors that perform surgeries. I wanted to know, do they have to retire at a certain age? Because that would have been very interesting to me. Again, that's totally different because you're talking about like physically being precise. I couldn't find anything necessarily. I saw like most will retire around the age of 65, but again, it's different for everybody. So yes, in that sense, age is just a number. You see people that are in much better physical and mental shape than others. But again, that's not the sole factor of this episode title, Retire Our Government. Would anybody be mad? I don't know. What if they all just retired and they're like, all right, a whole group of new people come in? I like the idea of having, you know, people that are least separated from their private life. You know, let's see doctors and teachers and police officers and nurses and like small business owners. And honestly, yeah, let's see, like, why don't we have people that are stocking shelves at Walmart or you know, working at the drive-through at McDonald's? Like, having perspectives, varied perspectives, I find much more valuable than looking at the vast majority of the 535 people that are supposed to be representing us, making decisions based on us, that have only been doing that job and nothing but for 10, 15, 30 years. Retire our government. Last thing, you guys, let me say this. This will be my last thing. When I would always tell people, go out and vote, right? Election season comes up, go out and vote. And I teeter on that because what bothers me is politicians that will say, you know, register to vote, go out and vote, da 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 da. They're saying it because they want you to vote for them. That's what they're saying. They're not saying it because they genuinely want, like, the masses, the majority of people to go out there and vote. I always say this: unless you are dead set on voting for somebody, right? And you're not looking at the ballot as like oh geez, let me pick the lesser of two evils. If you're genuinely dead set on voting for somebody, vote for them 100%. If you aren't and you feel like it is the lesser of two evils, I don't think all states have this, but there is a write-in spot for candidates. Write somebody in that you think would be good. Because, and my opinion on this is, because at some point, right, if 21% of people approve of Congress and 40% of people approve the president, if we had that 60 or that 80 or that 79% that wrote in somebody else. Now, again, I don't know election laws and like the technicalities of all that, how that would work. But if it could just be written down and registered, how many people would rather vote for Joe Schmo down the street than who was on the ballot? That, I think, would send a pretty big message. So, yeah.